Hey everyone, so I finished my home theater revamp and the response to that has been amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching those videos, commenting. I really appreciate it. If you have not seen those, definitely recommend checking them out before this video, but it's not required. This is basically going to address something that a few of you brought up in the comments, and that is the PC. So I game on PC predominantly in my home theater now, and I left the PC right up front on the left side of the entertainment stand, just kind of out on a little bookshelf thing. Like, it was kind of DIY makeshift, but I didn't really want to spend any more money. And so a lot of people said, hey, everything looks great except for that. And I agree. I've said, oh, I like how it looks there and everything, but in all honesty, I just didn't really want to spend any extra money. Talked to my wife, got to thinking, got to researching some other cases, and as you could probably tell from the title and thumbnail, I ended up grabbing the SilverStone Grandia 11 case. Now this is a all mesh front panel, which was important. I wanted something with great airflow. I also will be putting a 240 millimeter liquid cooler in there. It's a Corsair. I actually have a 280 millimeter liquid cooler in my other PC, the one that I'm kind of putting in this system. Will not fit in there, so it's going to a good home. It's going to my sister-in-law's PC build. I basically wanted a form factor that would fit in the entertainment stand that had decent airflow, and I'll kind of walk over all the fans and stuff when I dive in here in just a moment. I really like the aesthetic of this case. It's intended to look like a home theater receiver or just kind of blend in. It's all black, very nice. It's kind of pricey. Amazon dropped the ball on the packaging, so I've actually ordered a replacement top for it because the top came in damaged. The box came in damaged. It's got a big hole in it, so thanks Amazon for dropping the ball there. But we're gonna build in it anyway, and I just gotta replace the top panel, so no worries there. But I wanted to bring you along for this. This is not a tutorial. This is not a how-to. This is basically me going, I have all these components. I have a standard ATX motherboard that's going in this smallish form factor case. How's everything gonna work together? I have bought some adapters, some slim fans and stuff. We'll be talking about that too as I go through the process, but hope you guys will enjoy this ride with me. I'm excited to see how it all kind of works out. But first, before we even get started, I want to do some thermal tests on my current PC before I kind of take everything out, just to get a baseline. So let me check that out. We'll start with the CPU. Alrighty, so I've been running Cinebench R23 for just about a little over 13 minutes now. Cool, so let's see where our temps are at. So if we look down here, we are looking at our CPU temp currently 79.4 C. We've had a max of 80.4 C, so not too bad. And then our VRMs are right at 69 degrees now, and that seems to be the max. So things have kind of stabilized. I'm also curious, let me just scroll up here with my mouse to kind of see what is our performance look like, our clock speeds. We're looking at, you see it jumped up to 4.45 there for a second. That's because the test just restarted. We're hovering around 4.4 gigahertz, maybe 4.25. So not too shabby there. Let's go ahead and run the GPU test and check out the temps there. All right, we've been running Heaven for a little over 10 minutes now. The 4070 Super has stabilized to around 72, 73, sometimes 71. Kind of hovers between that, and that's honestly pretty good. The fan noise is a little loud. It's a little toasty in here in the room, but that's okay. If we kind of look down here, we can look at our overall power. I've not undervolted this at all, so it's pretty much pulling 220 watts all the time. You could see our hotspot temperature is right around 85 to 86 C. Not too bad, and the memory junction temperature is right at 74. So that's actually well within spec of the card and not too bad at all. So that is pretty much the thermal test. I should have probably mentioned I have a 5800X3D on a B450 motherboard. So the temps were okay. They're not the best, especially on liquid cooling. So I'm wondering if the mounting pressure is off. With the new 240 mil AIO, there's a different mounting bracket that uses all four corners. This one here just uses the old kind of hook style. So yeah, I've never liked these kind of hook style brackets for AIOs, but I'm wondering if that will make an overall impact. I don't know. I am using Arctic Silver MX6, so there is that. I will be using the thermal paste that's on, or that comes with the a Corsair Elite Capellix 240mm, the H100i, I believe is the model number. But yeah, let's go ahead and get all the components out of this guy here. That way we can move on to actually putting everything into the SilverStone Grandia 11. So while I get everything set up right off the bat, I want to talk about the case that I currently have, what you see here. This is the Phanteks P400A RGB White Edition. Now, all the fans have been replaced with Corsair fans over the years, but this case is really awesome. My original case was like a cheap AeroCool $40 terrible case, bad airflow, plastic side panel, not even acrylic. It was just kind of bottom of the barrel. So when I got this guy for about 80 to 90 bucks, it's been amazing over the years. And I'm really sad to see it go, but I do want something a bit more home theater centric. Now, this case has served me well for the past few years. Actually, it's been probably about 5 since I purchased it. Definitely worth the money. Love the cable management and everything inside of it. It could be a little more roomy. There are cases out now from like Lee & Lee that are far, far better in terms of the build experience, but this wasn't too bad. Now you'll see here, this is my original Elite Capellix H115i cooler. I actually bought some additional fans to do like a push-pull thing. So there's fans mounted on the front of the radiator and on the rear, and that should just kind of help airflow in general go over the radiator to cool things off and keep things cool. Now, my original CPU was a Ryzen 3900 XT. I've now since replaced that with a 5800 X3D that you see here. And that was just because this is a gaming PC only now. I really only do that with this PC, maybe some light live streaming or screen recordings, things like that when I'm doing tutorials for the channel. But overall, this is gaming centric only, and the 3900 XT isn't really that great. And I'm still on a B450 platform. So everything's now out of the old PC case. Everything came out really easily, undid all the zip ties. Very, very easy. I did blow things off out in the garage, off camera, just so everything's nice and clean. I wiped things down that needed to be wiped down, like hard drives and things like that. Made sure all the thermal paste was good. But anyway, we're kind of good to go of putting everything in now. This is the first time I'm ever building in a smaller form factor case. Like everything has to go in here. There is no side panel, back panel, whatever to hide wires. So it's all gonna be in here. Kind of simplifies things, which is cool. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Okay, so here is the top panel. You can see the little scratch, scuff mark, whatever you wanna call it, that I talked about. They have little thumb screws on the back here. We're just gonna undo. Just take a quick look at the other scuff mark right there. You can kind of see it. What I'm going to try to do, just to kind of give you a lay of the land here real quick, 240mm liquid cooler up front, doing a slim intake fan over here, 2 intake fans over here, 120mm, and 2 exhaust 80mm fans in the back. I'm trying to give this case as much positive airflow as possible. So all of this kind of in and then these 2 out, but I'm trying to basically give it as much fresh air from the outside as possible. And because this is in the back of my console, basically exhausting out of the back into the curtains that I have, we shouldn't get a whole lot of the air back there bouncing around. I mean, there's still gonna be some, but we should have much more cool air coming in from the room. I did order a 80mm fan for this side, just in case I run into clearance issues over here with the USB 3.0 header. We're gonna take the front panel off here. It just kind of pops out like that. You see a full mesh front panel, very nice. You can take a look at the front here from the front. We got 2 USB 3.0 ports, a USB-C port, and then this is a combo audio jack. So this is your HD audio. This is a mic and headphones combined, and then your buttons over here. So the other thing I'll point your attention to is at the bottom here. So basically there are 2 removable feet up front. They're just held on by Phillips screws, and then 2 on the back here. These are held on by adhesive. So basically something to keep in mind is when you look at the height requirements for this case, it does not include these feet. So I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna be able to just slide this right into my entertainment console. Nope, I gotta take these off and these off. I do have some anti-slip floor things because I don't want this to scratch up the console. So I'm gonna be using those. Those are like $9 on Amazon. So yeah, the feet came off without an issue, the back feet too. The little protruding metal pieces on the front were kind of a problem. So off camera, I ended up installing 2 of these big circular feet on the front, one on each side, so they won't really scratch the console. Not a big deal, but just felt I'd mention that. Also, you'll notice I'm taking the fans off here on the front. A note about these fans, this is almost a $200 case, and SilverStone includes 2 3-pin voltage controlled fans, not even 4-pin. So for a kind of premium price point, I would expect a 4-pin fan. So SilverStone, if you're watching this, please just add a 4-pin fans instead. Not a huge deal breaker, mind you, but as a consumer, if you're considering this case and you want that extra functionality that a 4-pin fan has, highly recommend picking up some additional fans and removing these. Now, the order of operations on this case is somewhat important. There are things that you want to install first. So for instance, the all-in-one liquid cooler in the front. I needed to install this side fan that I'm not installing yet, but I'm doing kind of a test fit of the motherboard and everything. But yeah, you want to install like the side fan by the liquid cooler first. It also needs to be a slim fan. Otherwise, you're going to run into clearance issues and you end up having to remove the all-in-one liquid cooler. Now, you also notice a slight flub here. I was test fitting the motherboard in and I started screwing it in going, oh, everything's good, awesome. And then I realized that, yeah, I don't have the back plate installed. So I had to remove it, no big deal. If you're used to building in a regular PC case where you have access to that kind of thing, then yeah, this is something you have to keep in mind. Otherwise, you're gonna run into issues where you're starting to have to remove components. And that just adds time to the overall build. Not a big deal, but it is what it is. Now you also see me here kind of trying to figure out how I'm gonna route certain cables. There's not a lot of mounting or routing options for cables. There's no like cable ties. The 2 in the front, the little Velcro strips that you see there, are pretty much it. I decided at this point that the back exhaust fans, the cable's just gonna lay over the motherboard. No big deal. I've done that before. It's not an issue. I could potentially route it underneath the motherboard, but I didn't really want to do that in case I ever want to replace these fans. I didn't want to have to remove the motherboard. So anyway, yeah, as we move along here, you kind of see me tapping my fingers. I just realized that. It's funny how you can even see that in the time lapse. I must have been doing that for like a minute. But yeah, I went ahead and installed the power supply. What I really like about this, and if you built PCs before in cases, you know that once you have the power supply in, you pretty much need to install the power supply with all the cables attached to it that you think you'll need. Whereas in a case like this, that you have access to the power supply easily on the back, you can just put the power supply in and then go, oh, I need these cables, and just install those right there. It's really nice to not have that to worry about. And that's one of the big benefits of building in a kind of all-in-one case here. Now, another thing to mention is I'm trying to keep the cables as tidy as possible, as you can see. Although, keep in mind that this stuff will never be seen other than by you guys or when I open the case. You can't get perfection here. Basically, I wanted to get the cables out of the way. I didn't want it to impede on the airflow of the case at all. And so that's just kind of what I'm doing here. I want to make it look as tidy as possible. I also want to make sure that if I need to access this stuff at any point in the future, that I have quick and easy access to it. And so just taking the time to do it here and do it as best as I can is all I'm doing. I'm not kind of taking a super long time to make sure everything is perfect like I would if there was a glass side panel on a case. And the biggest benefit of this type of case is that everything is right here. So it's really, really nice. Now, a quick note on some of the adapters that you may see here, especially like on the left side of the case. Basically, I got a USB 3.0 header extender that is also a kind of 1 into 2. It's basically a splitter, because the motherboard I have is a B450 board. It does not have a USB Type-C front panel connector. So I ended up buying a splitter that I was going to install the front panel 3.0 connectors, the USB 3.0 connectors, and also a little adapter that I had that converts USB 3.0 header to a USB-C header. However, when I put that in, the little connector broke off and I wasn't able to use it. Not a big deal. Eventually I'll get a motherboard that supports it. but I ended up just leaving the connector in because I didn't want to reroute the cable. I know it's a bit on the lazy side, but whatever. Now, I also did buy a 90-degree adapter for the USB 3.0 header. However, I didn't take into account that if you look at the little MSI heatsink at the bottom of the motherboard, that 90-degree adapter just would not work. I could install the adapter, but then I had no way of getting a cable in there without taking that heatsink off. And I don't want to remove the chipset heatsink, so that is what it is. I just had to live with this. I would love to get maybe like a micro ATX motherboard, even something like a B550, but now we're adding to the cost of a platform that is on the AM4 socket. So at that point, I would probably consider upgrading to AM5 and going with like a 7600X or a 7800X 3D. However, I'm just not in a position financially to do that right now, because that's also means I need to replace the RAM and everything, because that used DDR5. And yeah, so we're adding to the overall cost. Down the road, absolutely, we'll probably do that upgrade eventually. But as of right now, I'm extremely happy with my current setup, which is a 5800X 3D on the B450 motherboard. Now here I installed initially two 120mm Corsair fans on the GPU side here. And I actually off camera swapped out the 120mm in the front for an 80mm. Basically, I just was not comfortable with the clearance with that USB 3.0 header. And so I didn't want to put pressure on the socket or anything like that. So I just ended up swapping it out for the same Be Quiet fans that I have in the back. I just put one over there. And it's great that Silverstone actually includes these little mounting holes on that side for that very reason, just in case there are clearance issues. Now, again, this is where something like a micro ATX board would really benefit a build like this, because you wouldn't run into those clearance issues. Now, what is the performance variables or difference between an 80mm and 120mm fan when we're talking about intakes for a GPU? I'm not 100% sure. I didn't really do any before and after testing, although I will say I haven't really noticed any huge bumps in terms of temperature overall. But yeah, I mean, the build is pretty much coming together. All the fans are routed to the Corsair Commander Pro on the front left there, which is another huge benefit of having that thing. And yeah, the build just kind of came together really nicely, and I'm really, really happy with how it all turned out. So with the PC build done, it was time to check temperatures, and this is where things really surprised me. So on the CPU side, temperatures were pretty much identical to what they were before. Nothing changed. I didn't do any type of undervolts or anything. This is exactly the same as it was in the old case. So yeah, 79C, thereabouts, we're pretty much right on the money, within maybe half a degree. And that could be due to the room, the case, the mounting pressure, bunch of different factors, right? Maybe the pastes, there's a difference there with tolerances. I'm not sure, but that really surprised me. On the GPU side, things didn't fare as well. We did go up between probably on average 3 to 5 degrees Celsius, depending on the load and what's going on. And I kind of expected that. The hotspot temperature did go up as well, expected that as well, but everything here is still within safe tolerances, safe limits of the card. We are losing some slight performance here because as the temp goes up, obviously the performance has to throttle down just to keep things in check. Now, what I will say is that I do typically run with an undervolt on the GPU, and doing tests with that, it cooled things down by 3 to 5 degrees. So it was more in line with what it was before in the old case in this new case. I didn't want to run with that. I just kind of wanted a worst case scenario. Like sometimes I turn the undervolt on the GPU off in MSI Afterburner because a game or two, typically something with really intense like path tracing, like Alan Wake 2, just hammers the card so hard. And sometimes I run into GPU crashes because of that undervolt. Otherwise, in pretty much every other game outside of games that use path tracing, I'm good. Like I've never had a GPU related crash in those games. So it's pretty much stable except for path tracing. Not a big deal. So overall, I'm really happy with how everything turned out. I really enjoyed building in the case as well. The case is pretty big for what it is. It's definitely not the same size as my old case, but it was just so easy to build in. Everything was right there. You didn't need to worry about wire management behind another panel, so that was both good and bad. So in a case like this, I think it's important to note that you can't have perfection when it comes to cable management, right? It's just not going to happen. There's too much going on. You could spend a ton of extra time getting things like very fine-tuned, but really, I think the whole goal is to get things out of the way to promote airflow. And that's kind of the mindset that I had. I was not trying to make things perfect or make them look perfect. I was just trying to get things out of the way, tie things down. Most PC cases have tie downs on the back where you can attach zip ties or Velcro strips, whatever you want to use. And this didn't have any of those. There were certain points where you use like the rear, like kind of holy part, you know, the part with the kind of hole pattern above the graphics card to maybe route some cables and use those as tie down points. I didn't. You might have noticed I just had the rear fans just kind of along the motherboard here. I kind of tucked them away so they were out of the way. They weren't touching anything, or you don't really have to worry about that stuff most of the time anyway. Everything though kind of just came together nicely. All the fans attached to the Commander core from Corsair. So that's what I really like about that, and that is why I went with the Elite Capellix cooler, is I really like that Commander core, and I like using the IQ software for my fan profiles. I really just have come to like using that piece of software. It's nice having one thing to kind of control all the fans instead of having to go into the BIOS to set fan curves and things like that. I know it's kind of like a quality of life thing, but it's something that I really kind of come to enjoy over the years, is setting everything up there in software and then not really worrying about it. So I'm sure I'll go in and dial the fan curves in a little more there inside of the IQ software, but that is honestly why I chose it. Now, in terms of overall noise in the case, it's kind of the same as it was before, although maybe a little less because of the location of it. You know, it's in the entertainment console, it's not out in the open. The only fan noise I typically hear is the GPU fan, and even that is probably reduced by, I didn't put up a sound level meter to it, but probably reduced by, I don't know, 6 dB or so. So it really just kind of muffles that sound. I can't really hear it as much, and obviously when the game audio's going, you're never gonna notice it anyway. So the system overall though is very quiet. I think I have all the fans set on quiet mode. I think on balanced mode, things get a little too aggressive in the actual PC case, I think. Because of the size of the fans and everything, the fan curves are just too aggressive on balance. Default stock on quiet mode sounds pretty good, keeps things in check. I do have the rear exhaust fan set to balance, and that seems to help things. But overall, I would highly recommend the SilverStone Grandia 11 PC case. I think it's a great case with some weird kind of features that need to be addressed. It'd be great for SilverStone to kind of do a V2 or version 2 of this case and include some things like the whole front panel. There is literally enough space there for another 120 millimeter fan on the side. So potentially on a version 2, they could have a 360 millimeter radiator support for that. So if you wanted like a longer liquid cooler, although it would restrict how long your graphics card could be. So like the 4070 Super is on the shorter side, the version I have anyway. So that's something to take into account, but everything fit in here super well. Like I was actually surprised at just how quick everything went in. I think it probably took me an hour and a half, 2 hours total. Not too bad. I did take frequent breaks because I was doing it in the middle of the night and I was just like going to do other stuff in between. But yeah, it was honestly super fun. One of the like easiest PC cases I've ever had to build in. Now, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button. I don't know why I'm doing the thumbs up here. Also, if you have questions about the Grandia 11, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you have something that you'd like to see covered in a video about this case, please leave a comment down below as well. I'd love to maybe cover this case in more detail. I don't think there's a ton of information out there on this case easily accessible. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.